Obviously, I'm Richard Nebens from Agents of Fandom here with the director of the newly upcoming film Blood for Dust, Rod Blackhurst. Firstly, thank you so much for joining me. Watched the movie, loved it, and I really appreciate you spending the time to talk to me about it.
Awesome, thank you. Even if you hated it, I'd still talk to you about it.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thank
um,
you, thank you.
so the biggest theme, obviously, of this movie is it's centered around the world of drug trafficking, which is really dark, shady stuff to go into in this kind of movie. What was like your inspiration or your thought to kind of tackle that world for a big movie like this?
I mean, the script actually started as this fantasy fulfillment thing that was very different than I think than ultimately what we ended up with. I mean, this was going back 6, 7 years at this point, and it was much more of a playful genre film. Um, and we realized at the time that it maybe wasn't the best way to kind of talk about some of the other things we wanted to talk about. But I mean, the drug running was this it is drugs and crime and doing bad things are there are many different things that we could choose to stand in for the bad things that some real person might have to consider as they navigate life, as they navigate the realities of America, the myth of the American dream. And really, it started outside of that fantasy fulfillment, this idea of, well, there's no spoilers here, but there isn't a fantasy fulfillment component now, let's just say that. But it really was about identifying a main character who felt like they were rowing upstream in a lot of ways, a traveling salesman. And I think truly most filmmakers, at least myself for sure, feel like we're the odd ducks out. Like we're out there on the road. I mean, not literally, but sometimes literally, trying to, convince people to take a look at the things we're trying to make as we endeavor to take care of our families and make a living and find our own path. So, again, we needed to identify something, some sort of trade and enterprise that somebody could work that could choose to engage with, that was very clearly bad. Of course, there's a lot of commentary in the film about the choices we make and the and the sorry and the ways that you choose to engage with those choices. I mean, it's like some of us drive the speed limit because it's the right thing to do. Now, we all don't drive the speed limit all the time. And, I even think about gosh, I hope the IRS isn't listening, but the way people, choose to declare things in their taxes, again, it's the relationship between right and wrong. And here there's a very clear delineation between right and wrong. And that's really the way that we, work to incorporate drug running and gun running. Of course, I hope none of us are ever going to be doing that. We could choose to drive 65 and probably get away with it, but these other things, probably not so much.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, we never have to resort to that. One of the things
Fair. Although I will say I might consider it if it allowed me to make another movie. And just be
fair enough.
honest, God's honest truth here.
Fair enough. Now, one cool thing about making this movie, at least that I noticed, is that a lot of this appeared to be shot on location in Montana, which I thought was really cool. I mean, definitely a lot different from how a lot of big movies are made these days. How important was that for you to kind of capture that scenery, in the mountains of Montana and everything, as part of the story that you were developing?
Yeah, Blood for Dust was originally set in Texas during a hot Texas summer, in the same year, but originally set in Texas. When we were going to film in Montana, Montana was going to stand in for Texas, and we were going to film in the late summer of 2022. But because of Scoot McNairy and Kit Harington's schedules, we had to move production back a little bit based on some other outstanding obligations that they had. And once it became clear that we were going to be filming in Montana during the winter, we were like, well, there's no way that's going to stand in for a hot Texas summer. We just need to fully embrace Montana. And what we found, maybe, speaking to maybe the first thing we were talking about, is that back in the 90s, Montana was really the last state through which drugs and bad things were moving up through the United States as they came to Canada. And Montana was also truly the Wild West. In some ways, it still is, right? Like as an American state. But even back then, not until the early 2000s was there a speed limit. There were all these mineral rights and land rights and water rights being exploited back in the 90s. I mean, still largely to this day, with not a lot of oversight or purview. So, I mean, again, I mean, people were looking the other direction, right? It was a place where people went to win fame and fortune as recently as, maybe, last year. But once it became clear that we were going to make the movie Montana, we decided that it needed to be Montana, and it really like allowed the state to come alive. And I'm so grateful for these real places, these real locations that like are actual things you could step into today, and a lot of them still look like they were caught in time. Locations are also characters in my film. They give us limitations, constraints, they give us ideas, they make us feel differently. I mean, the way the sun sets on the Western Plains outside of Billings on a day when it's minus 20 degrees, like makes everybody feel something differently. Yes, we can depict that on camera, but it also like makes it come alive for everybody, not just the actors, but everybody working on the movie. And if we can navigate those realities and pain points of making something in those conditions, it can really become this magical thing that we are able to capture on screen. And so we joked on set that we feel like Blood for Dust is a new has its own genre, and that's the Northwestern. Yes, it's a neo-Western. It's in the North, it's like in the Northwestern United States. And like there aren't a lot of other films that qualify as a Northwestern. Maybe Ty Sheridan's Wind River, or Taylor
Right.
Sheridan's Wind River, but
Yeah.
I'd like to think we're breaking some new ground, where we can.
I love that. The Northwestern. Hopefully that picks up.
Yeah, yeah, we're a crime thriller. We're a dramatic crime thriller. We are a neo-Western in the sense that like our film has these tropes and these mechanics of a traditional Western, but we're also like a neo-Northwestern, So I'm gonna keep trying, my wife thinks it's silly that like I'm trying to invent something. I was like, well, someone, why not? Like someone mentioned it to us. It's not an original idea. I can't remember who mentioned it to us, so I'm just parroting what they said. And yeah, anyway, I mean, yeah, but Montana is a fascinating on-screen presence in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Now you were talking about filming schedules for your cast. One of the ones I want to point out obviously is Kit Harington. Big name, Game of Thrones, Marvel, and everything. This is a lot different of a role than we've seen him in. I mean, we've seen him do some dark stuff before. But what was it about him that made him like the perfect choice for this role? Because like even I remember reading a past interview, he said he described it as a pretty gnarly dude, and like it's not a part he gets offered very often. So what was it about him that made him the perfect choice for the role that he played?
Yeah, Kit once said in that interview that you're referencing that, this wasn't the type of part that he was getting offered. And the truth is that like I feel like as a filmmaker, I've been stuck in a box many, many times. And I've come to realize that most creative souls and spirits are not just one thing, right? Most people are not, it's not just this sort of thing. Like I used to be a photographer. I used to make music videos. I direct commercials. I used to direct Funny or Die videos with Dave Franco and Chris Mintz-Plasse. Like one of my first Funny or Die videos got Dave Franco cast in 21 Jump Street. And I think about this. So I think about this all the time as it relates to the things we're trying to make, which is that like I don't want to just be offered documentaries or true crime documentaries or murder
Mhm.
documentaries. It's actually, frankly, not of any interest to me, those things. I mean, in the documentary business, or the documentary industry, I am interested in stories about real people navigating improbable situations. But that has nothing to do with crime or murder per se. And I've come to realize that with actors too, is that like you get pigeonholed. And I honestly, like Scoot and I had been talking for several years, and we'd never really been able to put our finger on who felt like the right Ricky. And then one day I had seen that Kit Harington had changed talent agencies, and that he'd moved to the same talent agency I'm at, and that Witchcraft, our company, is represented by. And I fired an email off into the ether that, to our agents, and I just said, hey, I saw this Deadline article go up. Um, Scoot and Noah and I talked, and this is Ricky. Is there any chance you could give him the script? And didn't hear back for like 5 or 6 weeks, and then randomly got an email one day, and it was like, Kit's read half of it. He'd like to talk to you. And that was something we talked about right away. What he talked about in that interview is that like it's atypical. It's also it's also a character. His character is not just so wildly different from the valorous or noble people that he's portrayed in the past, but for him, it was also about getting a chance to play a character that's understanding. It's a different portrait of masculinity and humanity, and that to him was just frankly exciting. I mean, I don't know what other reasons motivated him, but I will say that like for me again, I wanted somebody unexpected. I want nobody to like know my next move, and I think most actors are the same way. And in this case, the stars aligned and it worked out. But it was truly like I threw one out into the, I lobbed one out there into the universe, and the universe threw it back. And of course, like Kit, I truly believe is remarkable in this film, and and does something that is just, I don't know, it's fascinating to watch. Like he has presence and people, and it's captivating. I mean, I think about when Robert Pattinson ended up in The Rover. This film, well, actually with Scoot McNairy is in The Rover as well, but like Guy Pearce is in The Rover, and I just was like, man, this. Like I hope people see Kit differently after they watch this film. He's a remarkable talent, and he's many more things than just what he's already done, and so are all of us.
Absolutely, and I've been a fan of his for a long time, and this was something. This is something that really impressed me in particular with him. And one more question about him before we move on. Like, I mean, like we've been saying, this role really gives him a chance to dive into something different that people haven't seen before with this really dark side of him. Um, do you think that like after people see him in this, that that'll be able to like help him kind of tap into darker stuff for future projects? I mean, obviously everybody knows he's playing Black Knight in the MCU and everything, and that goes into some dark stuff. But like even just for him as an actor, I mean, I hope to see him do some more stuff like this moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for Kit, but I do know the things that he's working on, and it covers the gamut of like, it's like it's wide ranging, and I think that like I don't know. I mean, I think that like I don't know what his relationship is to darker material or subversive material, whatever it might be. But again, I think it's just about he's in this, based on what we've talked about, like he's at this point in his life where he can make these choices, he can try things, he can take risks, and like that both takes courage, and it takes like like a lot of self-confidence to go, man, I'm gonna do these things. But again, he's got the goods to back it up. Like, so I don't know. I mean, I love him so much. It's funny, like I asked him a couple months ago to take a look at a film that's a musical. It's kind of a musical. It's a real story of a real person in music industry or music culture. It's a drama. It's a heart-wrenching drama. And it's also a story about addiction and regrets and I know that Kit doesn't I know he's not musically inclined. Like we've all seen some videos of him playing like Drops of Jupiter and Jimmy Fallon, which took a lot of courage, or or getting together with the Game of Thrones cast to do some singing. But I was just like, dude, Kit, I actually think you could do this, like because you're so incredibly talented. You'll figure out how to play the harmonica, play the guitar, and sing. And I've got, but again, I think that's just a testament to a person's talent and gifts. And whatever he does, he's going to blow people away. And right now, he's again acting in other funky, weird, gnarly horror films. And I love him to death, and I love watching what he's doing right now.
Well, from somebody who graduated from music school, sign me up for a Kit Harington doing anything with music. I would be so in
Singing
for
and
that.
playing. It's not really a musical. There's a musical component to it. Like
Yeah,
so,
anything.
but there's a lot. It's a story about music. It has like music is the only reason for this film to exist. So I'm hoping that like he'll come around and say, yeah, dude, let's do this. Yeah, we'll see.
Fingers crossed. So going back to this movie, obviously, like you were saying, you've done a lot with like documentaries, and like you focused on some really dark people. I mean, the John Wayne Gacy one, for instance. Was there anything that you were able to take from your work in the documentary world into a movie like this? Because I know you haven't done a lot of like full length movies before. And I mean, I love the fact that it goes into such a topic like that. And I was just curious to see if you were able to kind of take anything from that world into this one with making this movie.
I mean, there's not really a lot of overlap between and what I do between. I mean, in some ways, right? Like in some ways, there is like in on the granular approach to filming things, right? In the logistics and the realities of like directing, right? Like, um, I mean, the truth is that like documentaries give me anxiety, and nonfiction work gives me anxiety because you both there's a real lack of control when it comes to the world you're exploring, the people you're talking to, and the way that the story is going to be parsed out. You have to like you don't know where the end is often, right? You don't know how people are going
Yeah.
to tell their stories. You don't know if they're going to be their own best narrator or their own like again how the story gets spoken about and then how you piece it together. Um, I but I do love nonfiction storytelling. I mean, I think that like it's interesting. Like I've always had like a very distinct like style or approach to filming that feels observational, right? That feels like we're watching things happen to people. And I guess some of that comes from like, the nonfiction work. And again, like and not voyeuristic's the wrong word, but again, like an observational quality to things is like
Through the
seeing
looking glass
people in real
almost.
places. Yeah, or like I mean, through the looking glass is like yeah, watching people fall through, watching people fall through, like literally
Yeah.
fall down through insane experiences. Like that's definitely a part of it. But that's like that's again, that's more of a narrative, holistic approach. I'm literally
Right.
talking like moment to moment. It's like I do like observing people, like in places, and I think that that's a quality that like comes through in all of my fiction work as well. Is like how can we feel like these real places are coming alive? Because that in documentary you very much need that to be the case. It's telling you so much about who your subjects are, where you are, why you are there, and I've always tried to like take the same tact with fiction work. But again, man, documentaries give me anxiety, and also it's just I not that I need to have control from an egotistical standpoint, but the ability to craft and sculpt a world and to put it all together, to me is exhilarating. I mean, it's make believe at like a childlike level. Like I've got something in my head. I'm gonna gather all these weird random misfits and friends together, and we're gonna go figure out how to synthesize all those things and make it understandable and knowable. That to me is exciting. We can create it. It's and I've always loved that about fiction work and books and narratives in the first place. Sorry, my dog is chasing one of our cats. The dog loves the cat. This cat wants nothing to do with this dog, and it's a daily struggle. It's an age-old struggle, really, probably. But right now they're barking a little bit. I'm
We have
so
a
sorry.
dog that we have a dog that likes to yell at everybody, so I feel yeah.
I mean, yeah, there she is. All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
Then.
No worries. You're good. Um Now, just a couple more questions. I know since we're running short on time. Um
Oh, you're okay.
yeah. One of the things this movie, as it's been reviewed and everything and seen by people at Tribeca, and as it's starting to be filmed by screeners and stuff, it's drawn a lot of comparisons to stuff like Fargo and Breaking Bad, which obviously we see too, but it's also got its own original stuff. Was there any other specific movies or shows that you kind of looked at, drew inspiration from while you were making this? I know it's a
Yeah.
lot of your own work too, but was there anything you kind of took inspiration from?
Yes, we tried to rip off two Wim Wenders films, and I like say this because I am obsessed with Wim Wenders as a filmmaker. We tried to rip off The American Friend in Paris, Texas, although of course set in Montana. Um, I like like I love like Blood for Dust has in a lot of ways it's a very formal and artful, elegant, contemplative like crime thriller, but it tips its hat in a lot of ways to these 70s and 80s era filmmaking. And that's of course because Blood for Dust is set in 1993, so it felt narratively like the right way to reflect some of that time period. I mean, that's back then like those would be the things that people would be looking to. Um, it's very kind that people reference Fargo and Breaking Bad. I mean, I think it's probably merely just because Fargo has snow and we have snow. Um, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely not a lot of like dark comedy or things to laugh about in Blood for Dust. Although there are a couple of moments every time I watch the film with an audience that people chuckle at a couple moments, and I go, "Thank God!" Like, thank God they can get a break from the tension.
Right.
And Breaking Bad is a work of art. I mean, so is every Coen Brothers film. So I'm grateful for the comparisons, and I think if it helps people, it helps draw an audience to the film, I'm all about it. You know, people have a lot of things that they can choose to watch, and you know, and they're drowning in choices, really. People are drowning in content, like, let alone films. And so I think that like anything that can activate something for a film viewer is awesome. And I really hope that like people who love the genre, love crime thrillers, love like great actors, like will like this film and appreciate this film. And if they don't, we'll talk about it as well.
Absolutely. And last question before I let you get out of here. Now that it's obviously coming to general audiences, you know, it's premiering next week on theaters and on streaming. What is it that you hope, you know, draws people in to go and see this movie? Obviously, there's so much competition these days, and that's with every movie and TV show out there from every source. What is it that you hope draws people in to see what you guys have done with this movie?
Yeah. The I think about this like there there are real people out there struggling to make ends meet, struggling to provide for their families. They're very real people, like seeing how tilted the playing field and the of life is. They see that there are rules for me, but not for thee. They see the way that um, hard work, being good doesn't add up to much. And I think they wonder, how do I fit into this? Like, how do I get ahead? How does America work? And they really watch the people on top who are the dirtiest get away with it, seemingly get away with it again and again and again. So I would like to think and hope that like people want to watch something about that as a way to like understand the power of choice and the reasons why we do things, and maybe to be reminded that like we are not good or evil. We have the ability to choose. And I'm just stealing like blatantly from John Steinbeck here and like the main themes of East of Eden, but like that we are all between that choice, that we have that ability we're not one or the other, just like an actor is not one thing or another. And I hope that like people come for that. I hope that they like it makes them think about their own path and their own choices. But hell, at the end of the day, I hope this gives people a chance to experience a piece of cinema that feels like something that doesn't get made a lot anymore, which is just an entertaining, like tension filled mystery, right? That like as it gets parsed out, they go, "Oh man, that's what was happening then. Oh man," and like, and then by time it ends, they're like, "You know what? Like, I forgot to take a breath. Like, holy shit! Like, that's what was going on way back in that first shot that I couldn't figure out for a long time. Like, that's the movie that I think I get told time and time again people are looking for, and I'd like to hope that we made. I'd like to think we made a film for those folks.
Awesome, awesome. Well, this interview is obviously going to be found on agentsoffandom.com and on our Agents of Fandom YouTube page. Blood for Dust is going to be available to watch in select theaters on April 19th. Rod, thank you so much for joining me. Had a blast. Good luck with everything.
Richard, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Be well out there.
You too.